Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Again, we're Gateway Wealth Solutions. My name is Brian McGeehon. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Partner at the firm. Today, we have a really fun event. We're going to be talking about the new economic stimulus that was just passed. We have a friend of the firm, Jeff Camilleri, who is the president of Citizens National Bank with us today. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this new 5,500-page proposal.
It's a big proposal, and for those of you out there that may not have heard, Citizens National Bank is now CNB Bank, CNB St. Louis Bank. So
I like the new logo.
Yep,
it's very attractive.
Refreshed look. So,
well, thank you for joining us today. Yep. We've been getting a lot of questions, especially from our business owner clients on, well, obviously it's a very long bill. What's really in it? One of the biggest things of interest is obviously the Paycheck protection program, or now the lingo is the PPP2. So we're hoping just to get some clarity around, how does this work? What clients would benefit from this? So with that in mind, can you tell us what is the Paycheck Protection Program, second draw, and what are the basics of this?
Correct. With this latest round of CARES Act that was passed, there was $284 billion that was allocated towards additional Paycheck Protection Program funding. And so these funds can be used for one of two ways. For people who last spring and summer that didn't get into the first round of funding, for whatever reasons, maybe they didn't apply, maybe they applied in the bank that they're at, didn't get a process before the money ran out the first round, whatever the scenario is. If they need to apply for first round, they can still do that. Additionally, there is a second draw program, which is the PPP2 that you referenced. For that scenario, anyone that received the first round funding last year could potentially be eligible for second round funding. And we can get into those details of who that applies to and how that's working. It's all a very quickly moving target. The funding round, we are currently taking applications, and that window for us is a community bank. We are a community bank, and we meet the standard since we're less than $1 billion in assets. So as of tomorrow, we will be able to start submitting our customers for this new funds that are now available.
Well, we heard from a lot of our clients too that are business owners. When these things happen, it's really important to have a local community bank, because we've heard through many of our clients that banking relationship, especially in the first PPP, was almost vital on if you got the money or not. Do you think that that's going to be the same instance here in the second?
Boy, it's really hard to tell how quickly this money will run out. Like I said, there's $284 billion. It sounds like a lot of money. The first round last spring was, I believe, $310 billion. And within a matter of a couple weeks, that money was all used up. And where the disconnect is, there was a lot of people that really needed that money last spring. They submitted their application to the bank where they were banking at, and a lot of those applications weren't processed quick enough before that money ran out. So,
well, we were also talking about who can apply for the second draw.
The definition of a second draw is anyone that successfully received funding on the first draw, and there's some new rules that apply to that. Not only did you have to have the first draw, you have to have less than 300 employees, so that will knock some of them out. You have to show that your revenue went down in 2020. And so that's top line revenue, gross receipts. So the way that the SBA defines that is any one quarter in 2019, a borrower can compare that revenue with that same quarter in 2020. And if the gross receipts are down by 25% or more, it's likely that they will be eligible for a second draw PPP loan.
That's excellent. I know that in our conversation before this, we were talking about how this can really help the restaurants. And my question to you before we started filming this was, walk me through, so does, when you're doing the calculation, does the first PP count towards it? And you were sharing with me, how this can be very beneficial to the restaurants.
Yeah, the restaurant owners are a great example. Most of them desperately need this additional round of funding. When you think about it, it's very difficult for any restaurant owner to, meet their payroll and be able to pay rent just on takeout, which most restaurants have been just takeout only in St. Louis County. So the way it works is if they receive funding the first round, and all borrowers the first round were eligible to receive 2.5 times their average monthly payroll. So restaurant owners simply would look at their annual payroll for 2019, figure out what that monthly allocation was. 2.5 times that is what their PPP loan would be. This year, if they can show that 25% reduction in revenue for any one quarter, they will likely be eligible for the second round funding. For restaurants, they are eligible for an enhanced funding. Instead of 2.5 times their average monthly payroll, they're eligible for 3.5 times their average monthly payroll. So that's a big deal for these restaurants, and hopefully that'll carry them, deep into the spring when the vaccinations can commonly get out there. With the economy opening up.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, if you're a restaurant owner, I would be jumping on this right away. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
So, how and when can you actually apply? I know that in our communication, you're like, not yet. Not yet.
Yep.
Okay, we're still waiting.
It's an evolving thing. As of yesterday, the SBA has come out with guidance that has allowed community banks such as us to start submitting applications for this next round tomorrow. All banks will be able to submit their applications starting Tuesday of next week, and then it's just going to be a rush to see who can get their applications in, and it's anyone's guess how long the money will last. The first round of PPP funds last year was pretty much open to everybody that it's out there, every type of business. The businesses then did not have to show any loss of revenue at that point, and depending on how large their payroll was, they could actually receive up to $10 million. With this round, the maximum amount of a PPP loan is $2 million, so that's greatly reduced. Additionally, it's on the burden of the business owner to be able to show that they have an economic need for it. So, I'm guessing this, the $284 billion that they have allocated will last some length of time.
And I mean, that just shows another example of also being with a community bank that your window opens a couple days before the other ones.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So if someone wasn't able to get the first round of PPP, should that discourage them for the second?
Oh, certainly not. I mean, there's like I said, a variety of reasons why they may not have applied the first round. I would really encourage any potential business owner who's thinking about it to talk to their banker, get their opinion, and certainly talk with their financial team, their accountants in particular, to see if they should qualify for it.
So Jeff, if a business wasn't able to secure the first PP, should this really discourage them from applying for the second round?
No, if they missed out on the first round for whatever reason, or just they weren't aware of it, certainly that's a big part of what this is about. They can apply for first round funding. I would encourage them to talk to their accountant, their banker, their financial professionals, and dig a little bit deeper to see if they qualify and how that impacts any tax scenario they may have.
The other thing that we were looking at was that the first PPP, it seemed like it was ever changing. Did this 5,500 page bill clarify any of the first round PPP loans?
Somewhat. A lot of that's still coming out. I don't know anyone that's read all the 5,500 pages yet, so it continues to evolve. One thing that did come out of that is they did provide additional clearance on two things. Anyone that previously had a PPP loan in the first round of $150,000 and less, there will be a form that's coming out shortly. That will be a single form. The borrower can fill that out and does not have to supply a lot of additional information to be able to submit that to their bank to get that loan forgiven. So that'll help tremendously from a processing from the customer's perspective and also the bank's perspective. The second thing of clarity that came out is many borrowers also received funding from the government through the EIDL grants and the EIDL loan. Those are two separate things. Initially, last March or April, when the grants came out, a customer or borrower would be able to go directly to the government's website, and they were eligible to receive a quick up to $10,000, $1,000 per employee as an EIDL grant. That money was paid out directly from the government, didn't have anything to do with the banks. The original PPP borrowers, as they asked for forgiveness, the previous guidance was that the government was paying back the banks to the PPP loans as part of the forgiveness, but they were subtracting off any of the EIDL grants that that particular customer may have received. And it was the customer's responsibility to then pay that back to the bank. They have further updated that guidance with the latest CARES Act, stating that anyone that received those EIDL grants, those will also be forgiven. Oh, wow. So there'll be an adjustment period there. So any customer that has already paid their bank back, that bank shortly should be getting funding from the SBA, and I'm sure they will reimburse those back to those customers. Anyone who has not applied for forgiveness yet, when they do apply, if they receive that EIDL grant, that will also be forgiven. We talked briefly about the EIDL loans. That was a separate funding vehicle that was available through the summer. So in addition to the grant, borrowers could apply and receive up to $2 million loan directly from the SBA. We've had a number of our customers applied and take advantage of that. That is a longer-term loan that does have to be repaid, and that is outside of these PPP funds.
Gotcha. The other interesting thought, when I was skimming through the bill, of course, not reading all 5,500 pages, was that it looks like they're providing some good treatment to the 7A loans again.
Yep. So that's a great question. In the last spring and summer, one of the provisions was to take any existing 7A loan.
And do you mind describing what a 7A loan is?
Sure.
Just for
a 7A loan is a loan that a bank issues that has a SBA guarantee behind it. It's a 7A guarantee that gives the particular bank that issued that loan a 75% guarantee on those funds. So typically it's used for business acquisitions. It could be used for startups, companies that are growing and expanding quicker than either their cash flow or their collateral will allow. So it's a common thing that banks do, these 7A types of loans. So anyone that had these 7A loans as part of the provision last year, each of the banks was able to submit payment requests to the government, and the SBA was then making those payments, principal and interest payments, on the 7A loans for 6 months. With this latest round of funding that we're into, that has been extended for 3 additional months for all 7A loans. That will start in February, so it'll be February, March, and April. Anyone that has a 7A loan, their bank should be taking care of those payments. That's up to $9,000. There is a cap there per month.
Yeah.
So $27,000 total.
I mean, a lot of our clients, that has really helped them out because they were usually what we see them in is in like a transitionary type, they're like you mentioned, the acquisition or a build out or a purchase, to where it's early on in the business stage. So that has been able to provide a lot of relief. Yeah. And, do you see any, downside whatsoever in applying for the draw too, if you're eligible?
No, I think that's a conversation that borrowers should have with their accountants and their financial team, along with their banker, to see, there's so many unique things about these PPP loans, how it pertains to their particular business and industry. And like I said, the rules have evolved quite a bit. So they may have had some concerns originally last spring or summer. It's certainly worthwhile for them to have a conversation to see if it makes sense for them to apply for it today.
Well, awesome, Jeff. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if any of our listeners want to, be in touch, what's the best way? Where you guys, where would they find you? A
couple places. They can go to our website. So it's cnbstl.com. I can be reached directly at the bank at 314-735-1852.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Who knows, we might be having another one of these. We hear that there might be another stimulus sometime in 2021. We'll be inviting you back to study that as well.
Let's just all get the vaccine, and we won't have to worry about this stuff anymore, right?
Well, thanks again, and thank you guys for tuning in with us.